The show opens up with a flashback scene in a bar in Farnsworth, Illinois. A local man, Franklin York, meets a young college girl, Irene, during a night out. Franklin is a manual laborer and has his own carpentry business, while Irene is an English major. The two of them instantly develop a chemistry and eventually start out a relationship. In the present day, we see that Franklin is daydreaming about this memory as he stands in front of the microwave waiting for dinner to heat up. He has accidentally left the silverware in the microwave and jokingly tells his wife it might be time to trade him in for a new one. They eat it anyway, but Irene complains about Frank using too much salt in his food. Even after almost 5 decades, the couple are happily married. However, with age, Franklin is beginning to lose his memory, while Irene has limited mobility after a fall last year. After dinner, once he fixes a leaking gasket in the kitchen, Irene asks if he wants to go see the stars. Reluctantly, he pushes her wheelchair out to the backyard and into a shed. There, he uncovers a staircase underneath the flooring of the shed. They then slowly make their way to a metal door through a tunnel. Franklin opens the door to a capsule which teleports them into a room with a large window. A few years ago, the Yorks discovered an underground chamber in their backyard and made a shed over it. This chamber leads to a portal which teleports the visitor to a viewing room on the other side of the galaxy. At this point, we don't really know how far away they are teleported. However, the room has a large viewing window looking out at the amazing, although barren vista of a planet somewhere in space. They stay in the room for a while where Irene is completely awestruck by the view. After a while, Franklin questions whether something is going on with her since she has been wanting to come out here more often after her fall. He believes something is different because she is thinking about this even when they're not out here. He says that they have made this trip 856 times now, yet nothing has happened. In response, Irene points out to the door that leads out of the room and into the alien terrain outside. But he quickly reminds her that the experimental mice he put out there didn't last a minute. Although Irene says they'll just have to wait, Franklin thinks these trips are starting to take a toll on their physical health. He wonders if it is finally time they tell someone else about this secret. On the other hand, the old woman believes there is a reason they found this, and it is their riddle to solve. She asks Frank not to take that away from her, to which he agrees. While returning from the shed, their nosy neighbor, Byron, watches them go back inside their house. In the morning, Frank tells Irene that he has some errands to run while she goes to the doctor. As they leave, they see Byron mowing their lawn without asking for permission. Although that upsets Frank, the old lady believes he is just trying to be helpful. She thanks him while her husband bluntly points out that it is trespassing, before driving away. When Byron goes inside his house, he tells his wife that he believes the Yorks are hiding something in their shed. His wife reveals that she found their granddaughter on Facebook and sent her a message explaining everything he saw last night. She then asks her husband to leave the elderly couple alone. At the hospital, Dr. Marys takes Irene into her room and tells Franklin the checkup could last a while. The doctor says she thought Irene wasn't coming because her health might have been improving. But after examinations, the doctor reveals that the old lady is not actually improving since she is still in the wheelchair. In response, Irene insists she only uses the chair when she leaves home to be extra cautious. The doctor then inquires if she is eating, exercising, and whether she finished her session with the physical therapist. When Dr. Marys asks whether she has thought about in-home care, Irene suggests her husband can take care of her. But it is quite obvious by this point that he is not up for that task anymore. Meanwhile, Franklin is at the grocery store when he gets a call from his granddaughter, Denise. She asks him to meet her at a local restaurant for lunch. Meanwhile, Irene is trying to find her husband, who has completely forgotten that he left her at the doctor's office. Meanwhile, Franklin is having a conversation with Denise at the restaurant. She says her mom and her stepfather just had their 10-year wedding anniversary. Eventually, she tells him about the message she received on Facebook from one of his neighbors. They said they saw him pushing her grandmother around in the middle of the night. In response, Franklin says she likes to take in the night air. Denise then suggests moving out of the house since the fall last year could have killed Irene. However, the old man says they're going to stay where they are even if it means that they die alone, suddenly one day. In the meantime, Irene goes across the street to visit an old friend, Sadie, in an elderly home care. There, the two old friends have a conversation as Sadie goes on to tell her she used to have a bridal shop and sewed all the veils. Irene remembers this detail since she worked there one summer. However, her friend loses track in the middle of the conversation and asks Irene if she is there to fix the window. In response, Irene says she came to see how she was doing after hearing about the death of her husband. But Sadie loses track again and begins saying that she owned a bridal shop. Suddenly, Irene interrupts her and announces that she has a secret. She reveals she has been somewhere far away from this planet and it is farther than any human has ever gone. She then admits she is sick, scared, and not sure of herself anymore. But her friend, who probably has dementia, loses track of the conversation and asks if she is here to fix the window. Later, Frank arrives home with groceries and begins calling for Irene. He suddenly remembers that he left his wife at the hospital and goes out to pick her up in the middle of the night. On their way back home, Irene asks if he wants to talk about his forgetful habit. He blames it on being distracted in a meeting with Denise, who wants them to move out. Suddenly, their car runs out of gas because Franklin forgot to fill it up earlier. However, a guy later comes with gas and the elderly couple finally reach home. After dinner, they sit around while Franklin rubs her feet. Irene mentions how their son, Michael, used to run and hide when they came near him with the nail clippers because he hated it. Michael committed suicide 20 years ago, but Frank likes hearing her talk about him. He carries her up to bed where he sings to her. Later, in the middle of the night, Irene gets up and begins writing a letter to him that starts with her saying she is sorry. She isn't doing this to hurt him, but she has finished waiting and has waited long enough. She then says she is ready. She knows what is likely on the other side of the door, but she wants to find out for herself. She wishes to make her own choice while she still can. After finishing the letter, she walks out to the shed and into their secret viewing room, where she leaves the letter on a table. But before she can open the door to the other side, she hears someone moaning behind her. There is a man wheezing on the ground who pleads for help. In the next scene, Franklin is woken up by Irene, who has fallen in the yard. When he rushes outside, she tells him that someone is in the shed. At first, Franklin worries that the intruder is going to be a threat. However, he finds that there is an injured man, soaked with blood but without any sign of a bruise. The elderly couple manage to take him inside and put him in bed. Irene reveals she found him on the other side of the door. Her old man doesn't think that is possible and suggests the stranger could be dangerous, pointing out that he is covered in someone else's blood. The next scene takes us to Argentina, where a single mother, Stella, wakes up her teenage daughter, Tony. The mother-daughter duo lives far out of the nearest city, in distant, rugged hills where they herd alpacas and have a small church in their backyard. Tony wants to live like a normal person, have friends, and go out for movies, while her mother insists on maintaining the lifestyle they have. One day in school, a classmate named Macias approaches Tony with another friend. The friend makes fun of Tony and her drawings until Macias tells him to leave her alone. Once he leaves, Macias wants to know if he can meet Tony near her house. Later that night, after helping her mother cook, she excuses herself to her bedroom. She then sneaks out of her room to meet Macias, who is surprised she lives so far out. Tony knows her place is weird, but her family has lived here for hundreds of years and her mom refuses to move elsewhere. The two teenagers then head into the church. There, they sit down, and before he can say anything, Tony quickly kisses him. However, he reveals that he is here only because of a dare. His friends promised 1,000 pesos if he went inside the haunted house. He then explains that everyone thinks her house is haunted, as it is widely known that her grandpa used to lead a cult. But their conversation is interrupted by a furious Stella, who yells at Macias and threatens him to leave the church immediately. Enraged, Tony screams at her mother for ruining her life before going back to her room. Once Stella is alone, she enters a hidden door by the side of the altar and goes downstairs. Just like the Yorks in Illinois, she too walks to a door through a tunnel. However, instead of entering the door, she pulls out some strange shiny object from the wall before putting it back and leaving. Back in Illinois, the elderly couple look through the stranger's backpack. Irene finds a bar made of rock and what looks like gold coins that her husband believes he stole. Frank knows she believes he came from the other side of the door, but he doesn't think that would be possible without a spacesuit. Later that day, Franklin visits the pharmacy to get some medicine for the stranger, although he isn't sure he can do it. Sure enough, the visit doesn't go according to plan. At the pharmacy, he can't remember what to say until the pharmacist notices a box of old medicine in his pocket. The pharmacist then decides to call Dr. Marys to authorize the prescription. To the old man's surprise, Dr. Marys wants to talk to him, so he takes the phone. The doctor then tells him about his wife's worsening health condition and reveals that she needs great care or she might die soon. Shocked, Franklin goes back home with the medicine. Meanwhile, in Argentina, Stella finishes praying at the church and tries to check on her daughter, only to find that she is no longer in her room. She quickly gets into her truck and starts driving towards the nearest city, where she finds Tony walking down the road with her backpack. Stella asks her daughter not to be mad at her and takes her to the town for ice cream. At a cafe, Stella says she knows it is hard living alone without any friends in the middle of nowhere. She adds that she made a promise like her forefathers did. She then claims the people in their family are the guardians of something very special, and Tony will find out at the right moment. But before the conversation can go any further, she gets a notification from CCTV cameras alerting that there has been an intruder in her home. In Illinois, the stranger finally wakes up after days, and Irene gives him a homemade tonic for his fever. He introduces himself as Jude but isn't sure where he is from. He remembers walking somewhere cold with mountains when it started raining before he fell. Everything went black and somebody was carrying him. At the same time, Franklin returns from the pharmacy and introduces himself to the stranger. The next scene takes us to Argentina, where the mother-daughter duo reaches their home in a hurry. Stella pulls a gun from the glove box and tells her daughter to stay in the truck. She then enters the house, warning the intruder inside that she has a weapon. In response, she is greeted by an old acquaintance, Cornelius, who says it has been a long while since they met each other. Unannounced, Tony enters and the man comments about how she has grown up and asks Stella if she is training her daughter. At this point, it is clear that the intruder and Stella know each other. When we travel back to the York household, Jude gets up in the middle of the night and manages to escape his bedroom. He grabs a knife from the kitchen before going to the bathroom, where he tears a hand towel. He cuts his leg open and pulls out a small, transistor-like object which glows with a blue light. He then hits it until it stops glowing and puts it in the sink. Then, he walks toward the shed outside. The next day, Franklin goes to a pawn shop to see if he can get any information about the coins he found in Jude's backpack. The dealer believes the coins are genuine Spanish doubloons from the 1700 seconds, but he can't exactly tell when they were minted as the coins seem to be rare. Franklin asks whether he thinks they're stolen from a museum somewhere. Taken aback, the dealer counter-questions why the old man thinks the coins were stolen. Meanwhile, in Argentina, Cornelius talks to Tony about meeting her when she was younger. He suggests her perdisco, a ritual of passing on secret information, should be coming up soon, but the teenager has no idea what he is talking about. Their conversation is interrupted by Stella, who sends her daughter away to feed the alpacas, leaving her alone with the man. He then hands her an envelope with the details of a secret mission that she must carry out. However, she doesn't want to be his first choice and asks him to choose someone else for the job. The man insists she should be honored to have been chosen for the task. Furthermore, he emphasizes taking her daughter along in this mission so that the teenager can start learning about their secret. In the meantime, Irene, Franklin, and Jude go to a restaurant where the old woman decides to have breakfast for the first time in months. While they wait for their order, Franklin asks Jude whether any of his memories are coming back and questions whether he has thought about moving out of their house. After the breakfast is over, the three get into their car for a ride home. The old lady thinks Frank and the young man should hang out more. Suddenly, Jude gets sick and vomits in the back, prompting the old man to complain about spending $60 on that breakfast. When they reach home, Franklin cleans the vomit from his vehicle, while their guest is taking a bath upstairs. Irene knocks on the bathroom door to tell Jude she washed his old clothes in case he doesn't like the new ones. While no one is watching, she pulls out a shiny object in a jar hidden under Jude's belongings, out of the dresser drawer nearby. After a few minutes, Jude exits the bathroom and sees his old clothes, which evokes old memories of someone attacking him. Following this, he goes downstairs where he thanks Irene for washing his clothes, but he claims to prefer the new stuff. The two then sit down and have a conversation when Franklin comes and pulls his wife aside. He reminds her that she isn't his mother and shouldn't treat him like her son. When they come out of their little discussion, the old man says he and Jude should get to know each other and jokingly invites him for a match of arm wrestling. But Jude thinks chess would be a better idea. During the match, Franklin notices that the young man is using an old strategy he hasn't seen since his grandfather's time, but beats him nonetheless. Following this, he invites Jude to spend a day out in the town with him. At first, the duo head to a local bank where the old man withdraws his entire savings of $5,000. On their way back, he tells Jude he was a woodworker, and that was his trade for 50 years. A long time ago, a guy named Richard used to do the same trade in the same town. One day, he visited Frank to say he was excited about a guy in India who had a grove of Burma teak trees. He wanted Franklin to pitch in with him to buy the whole grove of rare wood, but Franklin refused the proposal because it sounded too good to be true. Suddenly, he stops at a gas station where he offers Jude $5,000 and tells him he ran a good con. Frank believes the stranger used the death of their son Michael to gain the trust of his old wife. But he isn't going to let her get hurt again, so he asks Jude to take the money, walk away, and not come back again. The stranger insists he is a good man and won't take his money, but walks away towards a nearby bus stop. Before he can board a bus, Franklin changes his mind and asks him to get back into the car. Meanwhile at home, Irene removes the glowing ball from the jar and holds it in her hands. She places it on the table as it begins making a loud noise. Moments later, the table suddenly disappears and all the objects placed on the table fall to the ground. She scoops the ball up and puts it back into the jar. But before she can clean up the whole mess, Denise shows up unannounced. Fortunately, Irene manages to hide the jar with the glowing object just in the nick of time. Later that night, Franklin returns with Jude, who the elderly couple claim is their caretaker. They tell Denise that she is the reason they hired a caretaker in the first place. Not fully convinced of the stranger, Denise pulls Frank aside and reveals she got a banking alert on her phone regarding his account. She asks if they have already paid the caretaker $5,000 front hand. In response, Franklin reveals they haven't paid him anything yet, and assures his granddaughter that Jude can be trusted. After dinner, Jude walks Denise outside and reassures her that she can come back to check on her grandparents at any time. She warns him that he better not be lying to her because she has too much going on in her own life. She gives him advice before leaving. Denise stops her car to call Katie to see if she still lives in Farnsworth. A few hours later, Franklin goes to the washroom to get his wife's medicine, leaving behind his wife and Jude alone. The young man asks why she is being so nice to him. She replies that he is easy to be nice to, but Jude reminds her that she doesn't even know him. He then reveals that Franklin told him what happened to their son Michael. When asked what he was like, she says he liked quiet, into nature, and often took for bird watching. On the other hand, Jude says his father left them when he was younger, and speculates his appearance in Farnsworth wasn't simply an accident. The mysterious young man thinks his father might be in this town. While Irene promises to help him find his father, her husband finds the bloody knife in the bathroom cabinet. As the water fills the sink, the small transit-like object Jude pulled from his leg emerges. It sinks back into the drain before the old man can grab it. Confused, he returns to the others and finds Jude reading to Irene and doesn't interrupt them. Unbeknownst to them, Byron sneaks into their shed and finds the hidden door. Once he goes down the steps, he finds the door to the viewing room. The scene then shifts to the desolate landscape of Argentina, where Tony asks her mom what the stranger was talking about when he said the Perdisco. Stella explains it is a part of being in their community, a rite of passage. Determined, she then asks her daughter to grab a bag because they're going on a trip to somewhere far away. Following this, she takes her daughter into the chapel to show her their secret. They go through the hidden door and walk down the stairs. She then slides the door open to reveal an elevator that will transport them anywhere in the world thanks to a device hidden in the wall. In a blink of an eye, they reach their destination, where they begin climbing a ladder. Stella says they're in Newark in the United States. Tony is surprised that they've had this for about 300 years. In the final scene, the duo meet a man cooking dinner outside a camper who has been expecting them. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on the notification, and leave 1,000 likes or 100 comments if you'd like us to continue part 2. Thank you.